Good evening, everyone. This is the Red Hook Town Board meeting of December 14th, 2021. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge allegiance to the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I hope everyone is well. This is the first meeting of the month for December. And I'm going to share with the folks at home. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is the public hearing and discussion of local law G1 and discussion about a G2 perhaps, and even a G3 with minor edits. And in addition to that, we have the supervisor's report, which I will start with this evening. Okay, very good. There we are. This is a report for the period ending 11/30/2021. We started the month with an opening balance of $7,760,134.81, receipts of $891,078, and we have disbursements of $1,287,000, and that gives us an ending balance of $7,363,444. You have in your packet, as you always do, the variance reports, actual versus budgeted, and we do have prepared for us by our bookkeeper and Conway some vouchers for the town clerk report as well. Are there any questions about the town supervisor's report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to accept the supervisor's report?
So moved.
Okay, we have some budget adjustments as well that, all in favor?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Bill Hamel, Jacob, thank you very much. We also have a few budget adjustments that she's prepared for us. You had a chance to review those. Are there any questions about those?
You might want to scroll through the documents.
Yeah. I can show you those budget adjustments. Here we are. Some increased revenues and appropriations. We did receive our second half mortgage tax receipts. It was good news about budget, so that'll be a part of the report you'll see for the year end. Okay. Is there a motion to accept the budget adjustments as prepared by the bookkeeper?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Christine King?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Myself, Jacob Testa.
Aye.
Very good. All right, we also have a town clerk's report, as we typically do each first meeting. Deanna, would you like to read the report, please?
Town Clerk's report for the period of November 1st to November 30th, 2021. Total local shares remitted to the supervisor, $5,776.17. Amount paid to the New York State Agriculture and Markets for the spay neuter program, $36. Amount paid to New York State Department of Health for marriage licenses, $45. Amount paid to New York State Environmental Conservation for hunting and fishing licenses, $635.83. Total state, county, and local revenues, $6,493. And there's a voucher. I hereby certify the vouchers numbered 28364 to 28474 for the month of November 2021 are an accurate reporting of the abstracts approved for payment by the town board.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to accept the town clerk's report?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jacob Testa, Bill Hamel. Okay, very good. All right, it is that time for, we'll stop the share, for our public hearing. It's on local law G1, which is an amended version of local law G, proposed short-term rentals. Deanna, would you be kind enough to read the public hearing notice, please?
Notice of public hearing, Town of Red Hook. Please take notice that a continued public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook on December 14th, 2021 at 7:35 p.m. local time to hear all interested persons on an amended proposed local law number G-1 proposed of 2021 entitled A Local Law to Establish a new chapter 112 of the Code of the Town of Red Hook to be known as short-term rentals, and to amend chapter 143 of the Code of the Town of Red Hook entitled zoning regarding short-term rentals and home occupations, to establish new regulations regarding permits for short-term rentals, and to amend the Town of Red Hook zoning law in order to adequately regulate short-term rental uses. The town board has classified the action as a type 1 action and declared its intent to serve as lead agency for the matter. Please take further notice that copies of said proposed local law are available for review at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, 12571. Due to the ongoing COVID pandemic, the Town Hall is closed to the general public except by appointment until a further notice. Pursuant to New York laws of 2021, Chapter 417, the public will not be permitted to attend in person. Board members are expected to participate the public hearing via teleconference or video conference. Please refer to the meeting agenda to be posted on the town website at www.redhook.org, listing the specific link which will allow the public to view and listen to the proceedings live, which is expected to be available at www.pandatv23.org. Click on Watch Live. Project documents will be posted with the meeting agenda on the town's website. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard as follows. 1, the public is encouraged to submit written comments by email or telephone in advance of the hearing to townclerk@redhook.org and 845-758-4606 by 4:00 p.m. the day of the hearing. Please note local law number G-1 proposed of 2021 in the subject. 2, written comments may be dropped in the town's Dropbox in advance of the hearing at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, 12571 by 4:00 p.m. the day of the hearing. Please observe the recommendations of the CDC regarding distancing and use of masks. All comments so received in advance of the hearing will be noted in the hearing record. 3, interested persons may register in advance to participate remotely via Zoom. To register, please send your email, name, and telephone number to townclerk@redhook.org by 4:00 p.m. on the date of the hearing. Persons interested in speaking at the hearing via Zoom should so indicate in their registration email to the town clerk. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disabilities. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance of the above address or by phone 845-758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook dated November 30th, 2021, Deanna Cochran, Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook.
Thank you, Deanna. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, Jacob? Bill Hamel?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, folks, I'm just going to quickly go through these slides. If you were with us at the last public hearing, you've seen them. There is a slight change. As I mentioned to you, it's now local law G1 we are having the public hearing on. I've made a proposal to the town board to consider some modifications to G1. We'll call it G2. That's been up on the screen on our website for the folks following along. You'll see the changes, but I'll walk through quickly for you. December 14th, proposed local law G. Again, as a reminder, what a short-term rental is. And it's an overnight accommodation for less than 30 days. Short-term rentals in the town of Red Hook are not currently permitted. It's prohibited until it's authorized by the municipality. Lodging is currently allowed only in the business districts. That includes the agricultural business district. And I'll speak to that issue a little bit more in a minute. What is still permitted in the residential districts, folks, if you could lower your volume there, please. We're getting an echo. What is permitted in residential districts is monthly, seasonal, and annual rentals. So this has no impact on a resident's ability to conduct those types of rental arrangements. We've had some correspondence from folks actually outside of the township of Red Hook in Milan, but with a Red Hook zip. We've had correspondence from folks in the villages thinking that this proposal will impact the houses that are in the villages. Villages determine their own zoning, and if I'm not mistaken, both villages are starting to work on what zoning they would like for short-term rentals. There's been some discussion. We heard comments at the last public hearing about how this proposal might in particular benefit property owners in the agricultural business district. And I want to point out, and in fact, somebody lodged a complaint that as the supervisor and also a farm owner, I should recuse myself from voting. A couple of things to consider. Legislative bodies like the town board determine all zoning. We all live in zoning districts. As long as we're similarly situated, i.e., as long as we're voting on zoning that pertains to the entire district as opposed to a single parcel, it's not a conflict of interest. And in particular, in this case, the ability to rent out on a short-term basis already exists for the agricultural business district. It was adopted 10 years ago as part of the Centers in Green Space initiative. Centers in Green Space, one of its key components was to ask farmers to give up some of their development potential in exchange for additional uses. And some of those uses, accessory uses, included lodging, 10 guest rooms in the AB district. Subsequently, in early 2016, the code was modified to include all the terminology that we had previously been using for different types of lodging, inns, motels, bed and breakfast. So that would all come under one umbrella called lodging. And in the ABD, 10 guest rooms are currently permitted for overnight accommodations. In fact, if it's on a state highway, it can be as much as 16 rooms. Okay, highlights of the proposal. And for those of you who are following along and want to know what's being proposed as a change, all residential districts domicile hosted would have one-time option for up to 29 days or a hosted one-bedroom unlimited. Okay, so that is the change that's being proposed. And that's in response to comments that we received not only from the public, but from our couple of committees and our planning board, which is as we're trying to balance the impact on affordable housing, we need to consider that affordable housing means not just having the availability of vacant affordable housing for the next generation or new people coming into our community, but it considers people that already exist in our community. And this is one way, a new way, or rather new way, that people are doing it in order to help pay those bills and to be able to afford to stay in our community. So that's the proposal under G2, is to include in all residential districts the option of having a hosted one bedroom for an unlimited duration. So now you take a look at the LD, RD, and R5. Those are our more rural districts, right? They're called Rural Development 3 and Rural Development 5 districts, as opposed to residential and our limited development districts, where it may be more appropriate to allow for unhosted. And so that is limited, not in the capacity, but limited in the duration. Again, we don't want to incentivize properties being bought up for the sole purpose of conducting short-term rentals. Primary residence is still a component of the proposal. And then we talk again about farm stays as part of an existing farm operation, having the ability to do up to 8 rooms maximum. Again, as a reminder, inns are currently allowed with a special permit, or more accurately, lodging is allowed up to 10 rooms, no matter what road it's on. 4-bedroom maximum. Okay. Next, this follows a nationwide trend of more rural, less restrictive, that you see. It's more appropriate to allow short-term rentals where the houses are not very close together. So we have again, I think that's a repeat there. The process application, we've made it a very simple application. You don't have to come in front of the planning board. I think this really changes the dynamic for the community, because the original proposal that was sent to us from the ITF had all applicants going in front of the planning board, and that would be both cumbersome for the planning board and expensive for the applicant. There is, however, still a site visit component, and we do have compliance. We'll be joining with the county's program host compliance to make sure that folks are not renting out more bedrooms than are permissible. For example, renting out for more days than they are allowed to do. Enforcement, we've spoken about enforcement. We talked about neighboring communities. We use these 2 examples as more rural and dense, and you see the differences in the proposed, or actually the adopted legislation in those communities. But when we talk about a limit of 120 days versus what other communities are doing, most every other community has a 90-day maximum or less than that in proposals that they've adopted. Okay, enough said by me. And so, Dennis, we have a list tonight, as we do. And for the folks at home, this will be exactly like it was last time. Just as a reminder, there's a 3-minute limit that was established well before my time on public hearings. That's to ensure that everybody gets a chance to speak. And Dennis will be looking for you to raise your digital hand. And for folks who are not familiar with Zoom, and you want to raise your hand, and we're going to go in the order of folks who've signed up, but afterwards, if somebody wants to speak, down at reactions is the ability to raise your hand. So if you are a registered speaker for tonight, we would ask that you raise your hand down at reactions, so Dennis can identify you and unmute you so that you can give us your input.
And you're all set to go.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for holding this public hearing. Generally, I'm a storyteller, but I wrote this out because I just want to make sure I fit in the 3 minutes, so I should be good. It's been wonderful to listen to all the speakers, and I have to say I've been educated and enlightened. I understand by the New York State law on public hearings that they're not so much for the public to speak to each other, rather for the public to speak directly to the board. So I'm grateful for my 3 minutes to speak to the board. As you may know, I've operated a small cafe in the village of Red Hook for 17 years. I do not propose to be an expert, but I do understand the challenges of our small businesses. I estimate our cafe revenue to be 60% Red Hook residents and 40% tourists, mainly through Bard College activities, agritourism, and when we did used to have our community festivals. It's not hard to see that the businesses in our village are struggling. There's 3 restaurants that closed on my street in the last year. The fact is, we need lodging. We need our guests to wake up in our town to experience us. I agree on regulations for STRs. I would never propose that anyone rent a room in their home to save my business. I'll do the best I can until I can't. Here are the questions I have. Have you heard how the opportunity to operate an STR has enhanced our neighbors' financial and social wellness? How it has made their home affordable for them? Have you spoken to a majority of the neighbors of the STRs to see if they feel the fabric of their neighborhood has been disturbed? Let's think about how the careful sharing and character of the quality of our community in this unique way has helped us to welcome hundreds of guests to experience Red Hook. I even heard some of them moved here. This is the way that people travel, and personally, I've done it too, and it's been an amazing way to experience these places around the country and the world. I am for STR regulations, as I said, the ones that would require an annual permit and ensure safety, privacy, and density limits. After all, the success of a short-term rental does rely on the character and charm of the community that it resides in. Although there was an information meeting in 2019, I do believe that this public hearing has been the first time that we've sincerely heard from our town and our neighbors. Proposed Law G could close several STRs and include regulations that are too much to bear for any small business. I urge the board to save time for due diligence and democracy and not vote on G, but maybe H or I. I'm hearing right now that the right regulations for Red Hook are not yet finished. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Next up, Dennis. I think we have, was Jason not a speaker?
I
Dennis?
don't see Susan line.
No, George Carpel, I believe, is next.
Okay, George, let me see if George, can you raise your hand?
There it is.
Okay, there we go.
Switch a little more. Hello, am I on?
You're on, George.
Okay, I previously sent a letter in. I don't know if it's been read by the committee. Basically, a couple of points I'd like to make. One is an enhancement of what Dan Budd said about due diligence, that none of the people who are currently renting Airbnb STRs were consulted, asked opinions, allowed to give their input. It just doesn't seem fair that it's been all one-sided without, quote, the opposition being heard from. The other point I'd like to make is that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and the rules that were written 30 years ago in the town plan are pretty inapplicable to what's happening today and what's been happening in the last 2 years. The real estate markets have changed. The travel industry has been turned upside down more than once. People that would refuse to sleep in a hotel because 50 other people are walking up and down the same path they travel every day are now looking for a safe place to go away from home. These Airbnbs, these STRs provide that kind of safety, that kind of comfort to people who have been traveling because they had to, or because they wanted to, or they're getting out of a city. We're in the middle of a transition. We're in the middle of changing COVID rules. I just think it's a very poor time to start making changes or enforcing regulations that have been in effect for 10 years without looking at the current situation that we're in today. It needs either revision or it needs a little time to breathe, get input from everybody involved, including the people that are being affected by this law G, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 18. That's about all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Next up, Dennis, I believe we have Emily Thacker.
Yes, I have her. She's unmuted.
Hi, thank you. My husband Joel is with me tonight as well as he was with us last time. So Dennis, if you'd be so kind as to allow us to have the full 6 minutes together. I think we clock in at about 5:14. So good evening, Supervisor McKeon and members of the town board. We want to address our remarks tonight with a preface of gratitude for a few amendments that have been made to the proposed local law just this week. Some of our colleagues will benefit from these changes, and consequently, so shall our town's economy. We together still hew to the validity of the long list of pleas that you have heard in recent weeks. Pleas to slow down, to research critically the issue of affordable housing, even to define its terms, to let the pandemic pass that George just spoke about, to get out and talk more to constituents and businesses. That said, anticipating that this local law G or G1, G2 probably sadly has the support of 3 members of the town board, enough to pass the measure, we want to ask you to please consider grandfathering in the very small number of us who will remain, who have been operating our short-term rentals without incident for at least the past 3 years. This compromise would address the concerns of those who acknowledge, even on the other side, as it were, of the issue, that there are no current problems, but who express worry about the future, and we empathize with them. It would ensure that all new STRs conform to the new zoning restrictions, but it would also avoid doing real harm to current tax-paying constituents like ourselves. By your statistics, Supervisor, there are just a small number of unhosted STRs or hosted 2- and 3-bedroom STRs currently operating in the zones where they are to be prohibited. And so grandfathering them in will not be a big deal. 2 weeks ago, you made the point that under the new law, many hundreds, or was it thousands, of properties in approved zones will be permitted to operate short-term rentals. If this is indeed the case, then the small number that currently exist outside these zones will be but a drop in the bucket. Allowing those of us who have built our livelihoods on the safe, clean, neighborly operation of our STRs to continue will have no significant impact on the community. It is a small concession on the part of the town board, but one that for us is huge and deeply meaningful. And local law G will be able to move forward, we suspect, with much less opposition, making its ultimate success more likely. This compromise would result in the greatest possible benefit for the greatest number of people. It will cause no harm and will earn the support of constituents on both sides of this issue. It will, in fact, turn this issue into an example of civic achievement and political success, met with gratitude rather than a source of continuing resentment and discord. You told the EDC supervisor that grandfathering is not equitable because it treats those of us with STRs operating now preferentially over those in forbidden districts who have not yet started an STR. But this is exactly what grandfathering does in any situation. It is intended to protect your real and current constituents, those who will actually suffer from the changes, as opposed to theoretical future hosts. And grandfathering is used in myriad zoning situations. It recognizes that under previous enforcement guidelines, a use was de facto permitted and is now being shut down, creating peril for the existing operator. You, the town board, would not be going out on a limb here. Grandfathering has been used in other New York State towns that have implemented STR restrictions. For instance, both Rochester and Lake George allowed grandfathering when they introduced STR regulations. And Red Hook itself even has a history of grandfathering in non-conforming uses after changing zoning laws. In 1993, for instance, when Red Hook adopted the comprehensive plan and adopted new zoning changes, to the best of my knowledge, every single non-conforming use was grandfathered in. Hosts in the R1 and R1.5 and those residents using their second homes and those hosts who have more than one bedroom will still have to comply with all the same rules as everyone else. Registration, fees, inspections, risk or loss of license with multiple complaints, and so on. And the grandfathering would, as it always does, disappear when the property changes owners, or if it is not actively used as an STR for a set period. So in the long run, in the future, the law will still do absolutely everything it is intending to do today. Some may feel that STRs are not legal now and never have been. I know you just mentioned that, Supervisor McKeon, and for that reason cannot be grandfathered. However, there is a strong argument to be made that all existing STRs in Red Hook, every one of us, have been made legal in practice by the lack of any past enforcement against us. Regardless of the semantic gymnastics one may use to define what STR operators in Red Hook have been doing, the fact is that the town board has no reason to inflict unnecessary harm on those of us who currently depend on STRs for our livelihoods. We have an excellent track record. We are highly motivated to maintain that record. Allowing us to continue will in no way diminish the effectiveness of proposed local law G1, G2. There will be no proliferation, no new non-conforming STRs. Everyone's interests will be protected, as will be the health of our local economy. Thank you so much for your time and consideration of this compromise, one that will consolidate support behind local law G1, G2 and ensure its future success, at the same time fairly protecting all of us, all of your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jill. Okay, next up we have Dennis. Well, first of all, Dennis,
Nancy,
I want to make sure we had, I don't know if he intends to speak, Jason Dubraski. Is
No.
he with us and he wanted to speak? He did not want to speak. Okay. Next up, we think on the list, Norman Gregg. Is Norman with us?
wait a minute now. Nancy Lee was supposed to.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did we skip over Nancy?
And I'm asking her to unmute, but I'm not getting any response.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. So Nancy, speak up.
I actually sent a message in that I wanted to give my time to somebody else who hadn't spoken because I already spoke.
Nancy, we don't do that, unfortunately. If people want to speak for themselves, they can. But we don't, it's not been practiced to dedicate time to other folks. Is something you wanted to contribute though on either G1 or G2?
No, just to reiterate the fact that this is something that I believe that is needed and necessary in the area because I have a shop in town and I do see people that come through, tourists that are staying at Airbnbs and do frequent our shops. And I think it is a necessity that it continues. all throughout the year. It's not just holiday season. It's not just whatever. I always ask my people that come into the shop, where do you come from? Are you here? Are you local? Are you this? Are you that? And, yes, a lot of my business comes from online, but there's been a big stream of people that come through now because of COVID that are staying in Airbnbs that want to see our town. And our town is not, it's not Rhinebeck. It's Red Hook. It's a great little place.
Sure is.
And that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay. So Dennis, I hope your list looks like my list. I have Norm Gregg as next. Is that right? Norman, are you with us tonight?
Yeah. Can you
You
hear me?
are. How are you, Norman?
I'm well.
Good.
Do you have 3 minutes for me?
I have 3 minutes for you. I always have 3 minutes for you. Norman.
Now it's 2 and 53 seconds.
Norman Gregg, COVID has been really hard for everyone. It's been hard physically, emotionally, socially, and not the least financially. And the Airbnb has been a point of light for the people who are trying to make ends meet in between in the chaos. And Airbnb is it's an opportunity to host. It's like having friends for dinner. You have to vet them at the outset. You set the table for them. You make their bed, and after they leave, you clean and make their bed, and it's an experience. It's an experience. But many of the people we've had come in our small Airbnb have been people who wanted to quarantine for 10 days because they want to come home and visit their parents here in Red Hook. And it's been a really hard time. But the Airbnb has been a point of light for these people, for the people who are hosting, because it's a way to raise a little revenue in an economic hard time.
Yeah.
During this time, many things have changed. As the cost of properties has gone up very substantially, the rental markets reflect that as they need to. And the people with second homes are suddenly occupying those second homes instead of renting them out, which has also adjusted what's available for rental in Red Hook. And for the town board and the zoning review committee to decide that the short-term rentals are the reason that affordable housing is no longer available in Red Hook is just absurd. Red Hook for years has been doing everything they can to make Red Hook more exclusive, more expensive, more difficult to come to. They've changed the zoning from 1 acre to 3 acre to 5 acre to 10 acre and now 12 acre for minimum for a house. They don't allow tiny houses. They don't allow if you get an engineering report, the town decides that maybe they should have a second opinion, and then they have their own engineer look at it, and you pay double. It's been very expensive in Red Hook by design. And to say that the short-term rentals are the ones that are making it's not that affordable housing is not available is ridiculous. So in this time, in this hard time of COVID and economic hard time, to take away a point of light for the people who have an extra bedroom or the people who have an extra room.
Norm, it's time if you want to
Of course.
finish your sentence, please. Go ahead.
It just is not the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Okay, who else would like to?
Al Lively is on the list,
Okay.
and he should be.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good, great.
Hi, Al, how are you doing?
Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate that. I'm just going to start out, and I have a little question at the end because I saw something that Mr. McCann, you posted something about a change in the G1, G2. I just was have a question at the end if I have time. But I just started out with the beginning of our Airbnb listing. Okay, it starts out as charming studio in a quiet neighborhood, and under that it says 2 guests maximum, no parties. And for the whole time we've been hosted. There have been times when we were over at Lowe's and somebody checked in a little early, but we are hosted. We are in the house. So it's been a really, really good experience. And someone said last week or the last meeting about how the locals are using it. And I have the same thing where a girl that lives here, she brought her mom in. Vice versa, somebody comes in, the mom visits kids that are in town. This kind of thing. So it's been really, really, nothing but great people. A year ago, we had a woman who she grew up here, and her sister lives here, and her sister got cancer and died. And she left behind 2 kids, 8 and 10, I believe they were. And she was coming in for Christmas to try and just surprise them and just, give them a little joy. And, us reaching out, they rented this is just coincidence, but they rented a red Jeep, a really beautiful Jeep. And I told them, I said, listen, I always decorate my truck with lights, with Christmas lights. So I gave them the Christmas lights, and they took it, and surprised the kids. And it was just, emotional. It was just so, and that's what the kind of people that we're getting. Last spring, a couple from New York City, one guy, the guy worked at the UN. I can't remember what she did, but it was very professional. And they came to look for a house, as many people did when things opened up with the pandemic. And those people that came and visited us, they bought a house a street away from us in our neighborhood in Forest Park. So it's really, and they love it here. And they asked if they could sit us down and ask us about everything about the neighborhood and everything about the town. And, it was just really, really, a comforting thing. And it was really, a nice thing. And somebody else said earlier too, that what's happened too is once it's opened up since COVID, is that, people are staying for longer stays. We've had people staying unusually like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Some of them are involved with Bard, and they have like a musicianship or an artist thing going on, or they're doing a theater thing at the Casaban or whatever, the dance studio. And but their longer stays are some to quarantine and some to just get away. But it's all been really, really nice. So I would bring up that and everybody knows this, but the ITF, it started checking into this, and I understand.
Yeah, time is up. If you want to just finish up your.
Well, I have my wife's time too, so I won't be more than another minute. So, but the ITF started, I think it was 2018, to relook at this or whatever, bring this back in. And in the middle of that, that's when COVID hit. So all these things were kind of talked about and decided before COVID started. And now it's a whole new ballgame. I mean, just in the last couple of days, the mask mandate has come back, so this is really just a bad time to try to, pass this law in a rush. Other people have said, please just slow down and take some time and look at it. I just thought that was a thing to look at, is the thing that, it is a bad time with COVID. And then, so then it comes to I just have my question here. Okay. Well, I would just say one thing too, is that there was a comment last time about a repeated comment about neighbors don't call the police. They all work it out. That's not true. I mean, if you're either, if people don't want the Airbnb, they're going to call the cops. And we haven't had any problems at all. And my last thing is, I just have a question. There was a little thing about, was it G1 or G2? And there was a change. It said 29 days, which was there before. And then it said, or 1 bedroom unlimited. Does that mean that me in a 1.5, that, because it says all residents. So I'm just wondering, does that apply to me? Can I have that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. For clarification, Al, yes. So you would be given the option of doing the up to 29 days of hosted or unhosted whole house, or you can choose a hosted one bedroom for unlimited. And the idea is that, again, it's accessory use. So it's either accessory in the duration, in the case of the more appropriate 3 and 5 and other more rural settings, or it's accessory in that it's only a portion of your house, a one bedroom that you're doing. So in answer to
Right.
your question, yes. you
So
would
then,
do
just,
a-
I'm sorry,
a
just to
host-
clarify that. So then that means I can just do what I'm doing now. I could rent that one bedroom, or I can only rent that one bedroom once.
You can rent that one bedroom hosted. You have to be in the
Yeah,
property.
no
and
problem.
You can do it when, there's no
It just-
limitation on the number
Right,
of
so it doesn't have to
days.
be one person. It could be,
It's limited
people
to
throughout
two.
the year.
It's limited to 2 people because it's 2 people per bedroom.
No, I meant I can rent that bedroom out more than one time per year.
Yes,
That-
you can rent it
okay.
an unlimited amount of times per year.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's true of all districts. It's one of the options that will be presented as part of our discussion tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we don't have any list. If you want to just take them in the order they raise their hands.
Yeah, sure. Who do you have, Dennis, that's raised their hands, who would like to speak?
Right now, I just see Jean Ann Schneider.
Hi, Jean Ann.
Harry.
Did that once, yeah.
Well,
that's
let's check them off as we go.
Okay, so that's you.
Hey there.
Hi, Jean Ann. Good to see you
How's
again.
everyone? Good to see you as well. Thank you, Robert, and members of the board again for the opportunity to give some feedback on the topic at hand here. I just wanted to reiterate thanks for the modifications that have been proposed, and also hope to bring a little attention to the minority who are primary homeowners here who also have a secondary home. I think that we haven't provided an opportunity for folks who are responsible homeowners in our community to rent out secondary properties with the restrictions that are proposed right now, which require that the Airbnb or short-term rental be a primary residence. So just wanted to throw that out again and to really acknowledge that this is clearly a sensitive issue with the number of folks attending the public hearing and the comments that have been coming in. So again, appreciate the opportunity to get feedback from all of the stakeholders and appreciate the board's consideration before voting on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jean Ann. Next up, Dennis, who do we have? I see we have Kelly with a hand up, Vicky with a hand up.
Vicky's next.
Vicky is next. I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Okay.
Go ahead. Jean Ann's.
Vicky, you need to unmute yourself, I think. There you
Okay,
go.
can you hear me now?
We
Yes,
can hear you.
thank you.
Hi, Vicky.
Okay, I apologize. I've had some terrible reception, so I've missed a lot of what was said in the preamble in terms of G2.
Would you
So my
like me to
remarks.
summarize it for you? The major change proposed, Vicky, is in having an option in all districts where somebody could rent out a bedroom with an unlimited amount of days.
Hosted.
Hosted, yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, I have some remarks prepared, so they're probably somewhat not relevant to the new change, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Norm was saying in terms of what SDRs mean to me. I've traveled and just a very little bit, and I love to give my tourist dollars to the families that opened up their homes. It was important to those families that I, as a guest, was rated and essentially vetted by the STR system. It was wonderful to then have that host family rate me as a guest. So you end up with kind of a community of people that that this system of hosting and guesting creates. So I think that the town might look favorably on that kind of a activity. I've been supportive of 90%, maybe even 99% of Red Hook Town initiatives since I moved here 17 years ago. I worked on a team along with Mr. McKeon that passed the Community Preservation Act in 2007. I worked with Mr. McKeon when he was a town board member to advocate for polling places at Bard. I'm pleased to be enrolled in the community solar initiative. So it was not without some conflicted emotion that I placed a question before the ethics board in terms of the design of the local law G. And I have no doubt that the ethics board will dispatch their duties with the highest integrity. On the question of local law G, as I understood it before this evening, the big question for me is, where did the design of it come from? When I looked at the chart in the back on the back pages to see what was allowed and what wasn't, it seemed like only those properties 3 acres and up were afforded a chance at this type of commerce. And I don't understand why Red Hook would privilege the larger landowners for this kind of activity. I don't know if there's data that perhaps I haven't seen or hasn't been presented.
Yeah, I'm sorry, your time's up. You want to just summarize your, go ahead.
Well, I just hope that the town board will reveal to the public the rationale behind the design of the law before they vote on it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Vicky. And just to direct you to some previous zoning again, in 2016, the change that we made to consolidate the different types of lodging, B and Bs were permitted in the R3 district. That was eliminated. So when you talk about, slightly moving back towards allowing some new form of lodging, that's why the R3 and the R5 came up. And also you'll see across all types of zoning, not just in our municipality, that as the space increases, think about your conference centers, your airports or whatever. A lot of times that's in your more rural part of towns where you have more utility and other things may be more appropriate. Contrast that with Mr. Lively, who spoke just earlier, has a lot that's 44 feet wide. For example, a very small neighborhood development size. Obviously, you wouldn't have a conference center there or an airport. So, okay, who's next up?
Kelly Burrell, she's unmuted, so she should be able to speak.
Good.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My name is Kelly Borelli, and I just wanted to talk to you, all of you, about other revenue streams and employment that are provided by the STRs here in the Hudson Valley, not just the revenue to the homeowners. So I might sound like a bit of a name dropper, but I just am trying to reiterate my point as I go through this. But I fell in love with Red Hook 10 years ago after moving here from Houston, and I love sharing it with other people. I wanted to reach out to all of you and share my perspective on local Airbnbs and all the people and businesses that they employ. I currently manage around 15 to 17 Airbnb properties from Millbrook through Rhinebeck, Clinton Corners, Red Hook, and up through Ghent and Chatham. By manage, I mean that I do everything from cleaning to meeting contractors to paying bills to meeting and helping guests, depending upon the needs and availability of the owners. There are the obvious ways that this brings money into our areas with tourism, weddings, graduations, family gatherings, and again, the revenue to the STR owners themselves. But there are the other ways that local people are employed that I didn't feel was brought to the forefront at the previous meeting. I hire about 99% of the time local people. I do have a specialty stove guy that comes up from Poughkeepsie, but other than that, I hire and employ local moms as cleaners. I use local pest control people, local pool companies. I opened and closed about 17 pools just this past summer. Local lawn services and snow removal, local oil and propane companies, local roofers. And when I do hire a general local contractor, I try to get in the contract that we hire as many local flooring companies, glass, painters, that type of thing. At least 75% of my Airbnbs run an account at their local Williams, such as Millbrook, Rhinebeck, and Red Hook, so that the handyman for that property and myself have easy local access to household products and maintenance items that we may need. In the spirit of transparency, I do sometimes have to order through Lowe's and Home Depot in Kingston, and I also often use Sam's Club and Target for paper products and everyday items. But that's still pretty local, and as you know, we have quite a number of Red Hook residents that are employed by these companies. Most of my Airbnb properties put out welcome baskets or something appropriate for the type of gathering the guests are having. I've used the local flower market, petals and moss, and bat bills for flowers and arrangements. I frequent local farmers markets like Migliorelli's, Montgomery Place, Wonderland, just to name a few, so I can put out fresh fruits, vegetables, honey, and cheeses or other specialty items. I use a small company, Plated by Robin, for cheese, hot chocolate, and cocoa baskets. And I also go to Tallahassee Winery and the Hudson Valley Distillery to provide wine and spirits. If guests want a chef, I have several go-to local ones that we call, along with catering needs. I was very sad to see J&J's close, as they were a fabulous go-to for me. I suggest and often book outings for guests, such as berry picking at Griggs Farm or apple picking at Rose Hill or other nearby farms. If their kids want to see animals, then I suggest Kosicki Farms, especially during the fall pumpkin season. I make recommendations. I'm sorry, what?
Your time is up. If you.
Oh, okay, sorry. In closing, I just wanted to say that, you know, when we do this type of work, there are other revenues that are generated. It's not just to the homeowner. You employ a lot of local people, myself included. So I'd like for that to be considered when we make these types of, these meetings, and we all come together and try and work something out that's beneficial to all of us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kelly. I think, Dennis, Bob Skype Paula. I hope
Yes,
I pronounced it
I'm
correctly.
asking him to unmute.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi,
everybody.
Bob. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Robert. In the beginning of the meeting, it was announced that the town hall's closed. With the pandemic, which has been reiterated over and over and over again, on such a highly contested issue, I think we need to put this, hit the pause button. It's been said over and over and over again that, this is not the time to make these kinds of decisions. The law's been changed just recently, so I feel like it's morphing, and I think we need more time to get to a more accurate perception of what needs to be done. As George said, we need time to breathe. Emily, we need the pandemic to pass. Greg, COVID, not the time. Al, he mentioned the pandemic. It's just putting more pressure and more stress on a community that's already stressed out. And, as far as Vicky and her examples that you gave, utilities, commercial, airport, I don't see the parallel to what these Airbnbs have to offer relative to a utility, commercial space, and airports. There seems to be a reoccurring theme here, and I don't know what else the community could say to the board.
Thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your input. Is there anyone else who would like to speak who hasn't had a chance to speak before the board begins to discuss modifications under G2 and potentially even a couple more? Oh, we got Justin.
Yeah.
Justin Carr. Justin, if you would unmute
Hi.
yourself. There we go.
Yep.
Hi,
Thank
Justin.
you. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for the time, particularly the town council. I'm going to speak a little bit off the cuff, and I'll try and be very brief. We rented, like many have mentioned, in Red Hook. Ended up moving our family there. Our children were enrolled at Montessori at the old schoolhouse and Mill Road Primary. Right now, we need to spend extended times away from Red Hook, unfortunately, but we hope to return, and we always look forward to coming up, whether it's weekends, vacations. Red Hook is such a part of us, and without being able to rent at times on Airbnb, and I'll mention we're in a R3 in North Red Hook, a private road off of Bud's Corners, on a plot of land. We continue to be close with our neighbors. They get our mail when we're not there. They come over for drinks. We go over there for dinner. And the idea of not being able for my kids to continue to have Red Hook be part of our lives, it rips out a part of our hearts. And when I hear things like being neighborly or acting within the rural community, none of this seems in keeping with either of those themes. My other concern is, as someone who cares deeply about Red Hook, this decision seems to be made in a vacuum. Many, like Kelly, have spoken about the jobs that this brings. We too use locals for housekeeping, pool maintenance, repairs, and so on. And I would hate for Red Hook to make a decision tonight or in the near future that can have an impact that could last for decades. I appreciate the need to keep a rural community, but I think that also part of that is what's going to attract other people to join that community or to stay in the community or move back to the community after having lived somewhere else. And I think it would be very easy for Red Hook to go downhill in a pretty short matter of time. And I would hate, again, for a decision to be made in the near future that makes Red Hook a stain on the Hudson Valley. It's such a beautiful place that attracts so many because of the attractions, the cultural institutions, the farms, many of which, for the time being at least, depend on STRs. So I hope that goes into consideration in any future decisions.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak who hasn't had a chance? If not, we'll give it a minute. All right. So folks, I would encourage you to stay up on this. If we do make some additional changes, we will likely continue the public hearing until our next meeting on the 22nd. That you have seen the proposed changes or heard about the proposed changes, essentially the major one being the option of having hosted one bedroom in all residential, or rather all zoning districts. It's an either or, it's not, you get both. And we are also going to contemplate perhaps some minor changes, most of it linguistics, but we did have one aspect to discuss about minimum lot size, whether it's conforming to the district, whether or not that should be the case moving forward. So, but I do encourage you to stay with us because there will be a continuation of the public hearing on the 22nd. If we adopt any of these changes, G2, and we'll call it G3 with a couple of those more minor changes, but nonetheless, okay. We have also had some written correspondence, additional written correspondence. Deanna, if you'd be kind enough to just list the names of the individuals who wrote to us, please, or organizations.
In order of receipt: Jason Dabrowski, Walter and Elizabeth Avis, Emily Hout, Marguerite Cook, Charlie Gatchins, I'm sorry if I didn't say that correctly, Carl Hoyt, Jeremy Bean, George Carpel, Red Hook Coast Alliance, Lauren Pohl, Kelly Borelli, Bailey Williams, Timothy Lynch, Paul Chevalier, Vicky Perry.
Very good. Thank you very much, Deanna. Okay, in addition to that, we had referrals, we had input from our planning board. And our planning board had some comments which we've incorporated. Michelle, Greg, are you with us? We can go over. We also had a referral from county planning. Had some initial comments. There were no additional comments as it relates to the updated copy. Michelle, would you walk us through, if you will? I think we should take a look at some of the seeker work that we did. Chris Shaw?
May I share my screen, Robert?
Sure.
Let me see if I can do that.
All right, and Chris is unmuted as well. Okay.
Yeah. So at the last meeting, we reviewed the Part 2 EAF, the draft Part 2 EAF, and we looked at that and had identified only one potential impact, which is on historic and archaeological resources. And this is because the proposed action will occur town-wide, and there are historic and archaeological resources in the town. It was identified as being a small impact because the action itself does not propose development. And actually any development that may occur indirectly because of the action would be, possibly the construction of a single family home or an accessory dwelling or an accessory building on a farm. All of those are actually type 2 actions under seeker in any case. So these are really very small impact on historic and archaeological resources. That was the only potential impact that was identified, and it has been identified as being small. I don't know if the town board has any questions regarding the Part 1 EAF comments or questions. No?
I don't know.
I will, pardon me?
We've had a chance to review.
I think you've had a chance to review that. I will note under question number 18, consistency with community character, that it does, I've highlighted the language here, it is required by the state that you consider whether a proposed action may displace affordable or low income housing in an area where there is a shortage of such housing. That is a requirement that you consider that. So you must balance some of these interests that have been expressed with a concern about affordable housing. We did make some minor revisions to the negative declaration to address that. This is the draft negative declaration that we looked at the last meeting. And we have made a few revisions to this. They're shown in redlining. The first one, this is just a grammatical clarification to make it clear that it's weddings, banquets, restaurants would not be permitted in connection with the short-term rental. That's just a grammatical clarification. The second one, since short-term rentals would actually not be completely prohibited in smaller residential districts, there would be the one-time option for the hosted or unhosted for less than 30 days. And now you are possibly considering allowing a renting of one room in a hosted situation. We changed that word from prohibited to limiting. This is just a correction. It's actually called the agricultural business district. Same thing here. We just clarified that the residential districts are more dense. And again, we referred to these other districts where it would be short-term rentals would be more limited. We've added some discussion here specific to Dutchess County and Red Hook regarding affordable housing in the community. the 2020 Dutchess County Rental Housing Survey has found that the vacancy rate for rental housing in Dutchess County over the last 20 years has been very low. And it hit an historic low in 2020. It was less than 1/5 of what is considered to be a healthy indicator. So it was at 0.9%, whereas you can see that 5% is considered to be a healthy indicator. So the data that they present in their study is applicable. Also, their findings apply also to Red Hook, which had only 7 rental units available in 2020. And the study does cite short-term rentals as being one factor that's contributed to this low vacancy rate. So that is, why you have to be balancing these different interests and comments. This is also just a clarification with the exception of the farm stays, and then it would also be at the exception of the one bedroom that could be rented in all of the districts if you decided to amend the local law in that way. The hosted and the larger hosted rentals would be limited to an aggregate of 120 days, where the other ones would not be. And those are the only changes that have been proposed so far.
Okay, and then you had there's a very long list of a review of comments that we heard from the previous public hearing that you collected, and you also identify in that review some of the resources that we've been studying as part of this deliberation.
Yes, that's correct. Do you want me to pull that up as well? It's a very
Would you
long.
just pull it up for the folks at home? We're not going to go through them all because they're rather lengthy, but just to know.
Let me see if I have it here.
Just to know, that's the local law.
Actual law. Let's see, is it here? Yes, this is the memo.
Okay.
So it is a very long memo. It does go through, it's addressed everyone's substantive comments. It follows the order of the local law itself. It begins with some general comments. You can see why is the town board proposing this, and something that really does need to be stressed is that short-term rentals are currently not allowed in the town of Red Hook. So the purpose of the local law is to really authorize short-term rentals as a permitted use in certain districts subject to certain conditions and approvals. So it can allow for short-term rentals lawfully in the town as an alternative to more traditional visitor lodging. So it goes through and it addresses each of these. There is a fairly lengthy discussion in here of affordable housing, more lengthy than what we have in the negative declaration that can be found in this response to comment number 16. It gives some more detail there. So I don't know if there's any specific topics that you would like me to focus in on, but I would encourage the public to review the memo. There were a lot of very specific questions about, parking and all kinds of things. And we've tried to answer all of those questions in this document. You can see here's one talking about, it requires that they comply with the parking standard. Oh, the question was, there should be a minimum area for parking, each parking space. And we refer to the section of the zoning law that requires spaces to be 9 by 19 feet, 9 feet by 19 feet and so on. So I'm not going to obviously read the whole thing tonight, but it is up online and you can find it there. And we hope that all of your comments have been addressed.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, in terms of units that are operating STRs, there was some input that perhaps there could be some language that dealt with shielding. Perhaps STR operators might consider delineating their properties clearly or having rows of bushes or something that would provide more screening and other input. So that's something to consider perhaps down down the road.
Some of those kinds of comments, you know, the intent of the law was to streamline the review, so there's no planning board review required. It only requires the issuance of an annual operating permit. And some of those types of considerations really are what we call discretionary decisions, screening and so on, and would require planning board review. So, you know, in order to streamline the application process, you've tried to minimize the amount of review that's required. So,
Yeah,
again, it's a kind of a, you know,
something we might consider, you know, in closing with an application is, you know, not necessarily suggestions, but some ideas for folks to consider if they're going to be operating an STR and want to do so in a sensitive way, which I'm sure, you know, most of them do. And I spent a great deal of time this weekend reading everyone's reviews, and that was very, very nice to read. It was not surprising that Red Hook residents are really good hosts when they do have an STR, and the reviews seem to indicate that. It also helped me identify. We've been looking at a map. The map changes, I think I mentioned at the previous meeting, of those who are operating short-term rentals. In our community, it has a seasonal nature to it as well, but it was helpful to see that, in fact, what we've proposed, you know, roughly corresponds to what's happening. So to the question of, you know, allowing it in more rural locations, that seems to be what's happening anyway. Is that those are the properties that tend to be chosen for this type of initiative. So, okay, town board members, on the question, we're going to get to some other minor edits, but on the question of allowing hosted one bedrooms as a way to address the affordability issue for the current homeowners, do you find that is something that you are supportive of?
Yes.
Bill Hamill, thank you. Christine Kane.
Yes.
Okay. Jacob Testa.
Yes.
Okay. Any more comments? Anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, I would say that allowing it in an unlimited manner seems inconsistent with what we're allowing in the other districts. And my preference, but I'm not saying it's a deal breaker for me, is to have a shorter, not have it be able to be 365 nights a year, to have something maybe closer to what we're providing for the 3 and 5, maybe more than what we provide for the 3 and 5 because of the income issues, the equity income, about how someone in 3 and 5 could do a whole house, could probably generate far more revenue from their STR than someone renting 1 bedroom hosted, you know, in one of those other districts. But, you know, they are much more densely populated areas. And I do have concerns about that. And one of the reasons we had initially discussed curtailing in those districts was because they are more densely populated, and it could give rise to some issues. So I'm in favor of allowing it. I think it's important, especially for individuals who want to keep their homes, want to have a revenue stream. It's just whether 365 is the right number. And I would open it up for discussion with the other board members. I can live with it, but I think it's something we should at least talk about.
Who wants to jump in?
Well, I see what Bill is saying, and you know, it's always difficult when you say, you know, unlimited, because we did, we have heard from people that are either unhappy with STRs nearby, nearby their property, or that feel, they purchased a home in a residential neighborhood, a residential area. And, then, running an STR out of your home is a business. And so that, they did not buy a home in an area to have a business located nearby or next door or down the street. So to have, even though it's required to be hosted, so that, that addresses the, keeping it as an accessory use because the homeowner has to be there. I do think that I'm not completely on board with unlimited yet. So I guess I have to think about that some more.
Okay. Jacob, did you want to offer any thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious whether the other board members have any, like on this topic, whether there's a limit that makes sense, like in raising this as an issue for the 1 bedroom. Like, if you don't want it to be unlimited, I'm curious, like, what limit you might set for that as a reasonable compromise between the things that I think Christine was talking
Is there
about.
a suggested number of days? Yeah.
We have 120 nights in the law for the previous uses in draft form. Excuse me. So, and I think that as many people have mentioned during the pandemic, travelers are making use of Airbnbs in a way that maybe they weren't before. So the trend in use has changed. Maybe you would have come up for a weekend and people are coming for a week, or they're coming for 2 weeks. Maybe they're quarantining before an event, as someone mentioned, or, they want to get out of a nearby, more populated area. So it's difficult to sort of, pluck a number out of the air. But, I do think, again, we have received comments from folks who have concerns about STRs, for everything from privacy and safety to property values, we've heard about. So I do think that, there's something to be said for allowing a break now and again. Now, that doesn't mean that even if it was about unlimited, that people would have someone there for 365 nights a year. I'm sure that as the host, you probably want a break also from doing that. So, we could just say, well, if it's, if it's 180 more nights possible, that, I don't know, maybe we take half of that at 90. So we add that on to the 120. So it's around 200-ish. That's a suggestion. I don't know.
One thing I've seen some communities do is, and I believe Milan did it, but I've seen others where basically, regardless of the limit, the aggregate limit, they require a certain space of time between rentals. So say we did it unlimited, right? You wouldn't be able, say someone wanted to rent it 365 nights. If you had said, well, there had to be a break in time, that would prevent that from happening. But then again, you just have to do the math and figure out what is that break, and then where does it bring you to where does it bring you to that aggregate number? So if the break was 2 nights or 3 nights, then you'd have to do the math and figure out then so that leaves 4 nights a week. So I'm in favor mostly because of having a higher number for the hosted 1 bedroom, only because I do think that if you own in the 3 or 5, and I went on Airbnb and I've been looking at listings, and I want to echo what Robert said, that I am very happy to see all the great comments that come in, and we appear to have good hosts. But I do look at the price on compared to, say, maybe 100 or 125 for one room a night versus someone getting 600 a night for a whole house. And if you do the math on that, someone who can do 120 days in an aggregate at 600 a night has a greater earning potential than somebody who can only get maybe 100, 125. Now, granted, there are some periods of time like sheep and wool and other where if you went and looked at, everybody raises their prices because of supply and demand, but still there just seems to be in my gut an inequity, and that we have to try to find a way to bridge that gap. And I think the way to bridge it is to have a limit but have it be higher than 120. I'm not comfortable with 365. I'm just not. And I think, what you suggested, Christine, is something I could certainly live with. And then maybe have some kind of break, like a 2-day break in between, so that you don't have a constant rotating issue of people coming in where it really is running like a hotel. And I think that's a concern of people. And it's not just here, but in many communities, it's just a churn of people checking in and checking out. Even if it's hosted and the person lives there, there's a lot of people moving in and out of the facility. So that would be my thinking.
Jacob, where are you coming down on that? Did you have a number of nights in mind?
I didn't have a number of nights in mind. I think that when I was first thinking about this proposal, because I am in favor of having this be available, I kind of intuited that we would want to set some sort of limit. And I think that, the number that you set, or the number you suggested, like doing, 90 plus to 120 is, 210 days. That puts you at about 7 full months of the year, which feels like a pretty substantial amount. So that it feels like a lot, but it feels like it's reasonable, considering what Bill was talking about with the offset for the ability to, generate the income from that in a way that feels a little bit more equitable than the people who have the ability to do, a full home or something like that in a different district. I guess thinking about what these places look like and where they are within neighborhoods, being mindful of the ability to, like you said, I don't think that we're going to have people there 365 days a year, right? I don't think that that's really what's going to happen. And I guess that's one of the things that as we've been going through this process, I know that a number of residents have written to us saying that the 120-day limit feels too low. And I don't really have a sense for the number of days that the average STR in Red Hook is currently renting out, a room or a house or something like that. But I think the number that you suggested feels like reasonable to me. It feels like a substantial amount that's, not the 365, but it's also not so limited. So, like I said, it sounds like a good compromise to me, but also I hadn't really set my own limit. So I'm open to hearing if Robert has any thoughts on that, or, kind of what other input might be.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you would think that 210, for example, that you're throwing out there would probably cover everybody doing what they're doing now. I don't know that that's the case. If we make this change, by the way, and we have an additional public hearing, we may get comments to that effect. Whether or not 210 is enough for them to pay their bills, so on and so forth. We talked a lot about affordable housing, and affordable lodging is an issue in our community, I can tell you. So that $95 or $100 or $125 option is really I mean, I can tell you even firsthand for the daughter's wedding that happened a few months ago, everybody stayed in Rhinebeck, which is great because it was all central and, you know, they have all the traditional lodging there, but it's really not affordable for many folks to do that. And so I'm thinking in terms of not just, you know, weddings, but even sad occasions like, you know, a death in the family and there's not enough room for you to stay with family members, you know, are there enough affordable options for people coming into this community? So I do want to make sure that that's the case. I do think that 210, you would think that that would cover just about everybody, but we could get some input from the public on that then, just to see whether that does it.
There was one other thing. The planning board in their response to us did have a suggestion, which does not require, I don't think, any kind of legislative change. It'd be a part of the permitting process, but they did have what I thought was a good suggestion, which is that when people put in their application, that we, the town, send a notice to the neighbors.
Yeah.
And when the renewal comes in, that we send the notice to the neighbors. And that way, at least you have a situation where people know they're paying attention. And then if there is, you know, a problem at the renewal, I think you'll hear about it. I thought it was a good idea. I hadn't thought of that before. And it's not expensive for the town to do because you're only talking about, you know, immediate neighbors. And I don't think it's something we have to change in the law, but I do think it would be a helpful way to make sure that whatever limit we use is not becoming problematic down the road.
Okay. I could live with the 210. Was that Christine? Is that you?
Yep.
Okay.
So can we, I'm not exactly sure of the process, but would we revise the law, you know, as maybe like a G3, as you're saying, and, you know, publish that on the town website, and then we could therefore get feedback from people if we, you know, because we would then keep the public hearing open till our next meeting, and then we could get feedback on that.
Yeah, we could.
So we can do it that way.
We can.
Okay.
And we also want to take up the question of for ease of administration and with feedback, some of the comments we had about not requiring the minimum lot size for the respective districts. So if somebody's in the R5, for example, but they have 4.5 acres, they would still be permitted to go ahead and have an STR for up to 120 days. I'm in favor of that change. Bill Hamill, did you want to?
I would think that would make the administration and the management
much
simpler,
easier.
right? So basically what you're saying is you wouldn't, you know, have to come in with a survey, for instance,
Exactly.
to prove that you have 5 acres in a 5-acre zone. It would just be a matter for the enforcement officer to just look and say, oh, you're in a 5-acre zone. Exactly. And that's it. Okay. I think that makes much more sense.
Yeah. And there are many, many homes. I looked at the zoning map that are non-conforming lots. I mean, you know, they're in the 3 and they have 2, or they have 2 1/4. And it seemed also inequitable to me that they would be in a position of not being able to do really much of anything except for a one-time exception, whereas everybody else would either be able to do, you know, a large number of hosted 1-bedroom, or they'd be able to do 120 days unhosted. So it seems to cure what I see as a potential issue or an inequity by doing that.
I just had one other question or a comment. I believe it was the letter that we received from Tim Lynch that brought up the point that we should check our definitions and the wording that we're using to make sure that we are not overcomplicating administration with, as applies to by the building codes. of New York State as opposed to this, what we're talking about here is the zoning law.
Yeah.
And so he pointed out there was conflicting language, I think is what he was saying. So I just would suggest that we also take a look at that and make sure because those are just what I think would be editorial changes to make sure.
Christine, I think those are existing zoning code definitions. We haven't changed how we refer to those. So
Yes.
that would be a significant change in the entire zoning law to try to reconcile those things, because the terms used in the building code are very different from the terms used in your zoning code. It's not this STR law. It's your zoning code generally. So that's a really different issue.
So you've already looked at the terminology that he mentioned?
No, I'm saying that he's raising an issue that is not to do with this STR law necessarily, but to do with the entire zoning code. Uses the word B1, which has a different meaning in the world of the building code, right?
Right.
We all
But
know
my point is, I just would like to make sure that we, if there's anything that we can simplify by doing some editorial changes, that we can do that.
It's not simple. It would mean changing your entire use table, right?
Okay.
So I think that's a different effort, I would suggest, and it's well beyond the scope of, I think, this STR focus.
And as long as the zoning law provides its own definitions, they do not have to be identical to the building code.
No, I understand the reason for wanting things to be, streamlined, simplified, and made consistent in terms of terminology. I'm just suggesting that I don't think that is an effort that could be quickly done with this STR law. I think that's a different effort. Maybe that's a request to the, board to consider for a future zoning amendment that's more comprehensive.
Yeah. Okay, Chris Shaw, you had some other minor edits for us on what could be a proposed G3. And could you put that up the screen, and could you help us figure out how we would put a 210-day limit on the hosted one bedroom?
So you're going to give me hosting abilities or sharing abilities?
I don't think you need that to share. I think.
Okay, hang on. See if we can make
doing
that happen.
that, can I
Can
ask a
you
question?
see, Robert?
What's that?
Can you see a screen that says G3 at the top?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
How about that?
It's a lot better.
There you go.
There we go.
But Jacob, did you have a question you wanted to talk about before we did this?
Yeah. I had one thing I wanted to touch on for section 112.5 for the operating standards and supplemental regulations. Number H, or letter H, I guess. I think it's on page 5.
Jacob, let Christine get to that, if you would. You're a lot quicker than I am.
There we go.
Yep, right there.
Okay.
Yep. So this section talks about including the permanent registration number, the name and contact number of the property owner, and local contact, in a variety of places, including an advertisement or listing. And I'm not sure that that's what we're meaning to do, to require that the name and the contact number be included in those. I think it belongs in the other places in this section, but elsewhere in the law, I think that when we're talking about enforcement, it's about ensuring that the registration or permit number are included in the advertising or listing. So I just want to be thinking about.
So Jacob, are you looking to say that this should only be the registration number?
Yeah, and I think that it makes sense to have the name and contact number for the confirmation, to have it in a written posting at the premises to adjacent landowners upon request. I just think the advertisement or listing feels like a lot to ask people to put that information onto a public listing on a place.
So does this solve the issue?
Just removing number 3, I think would.
No, not removing number 3.
Okay.
Read.
Oh, sorry.
So because you're looking to include, you are looking to make sure that the permit or registration number is included in the listing, correct?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I see what you did now. Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at the draft on my computer too, and then went back to what you did. I do think that that's.
Does that address the issue?
Yes.
What are the compliance implications of removing the name and number, though?
Well, the name and number are still then in the rental confirmation, written, posted at the premises and to adjacent landowners.
Okay.
Just not on the internet-wide
Correct.
listing. And I see Jacob's point.
And I think that's reflected in the enforcement section talking about, I think the language there specifically says for the registration or permit number being included in an advertisement or listing. And I think we still want that, but I think the name and number being exempted from this section solves that.
Okay.
So back up to the beginning here. So this would be a reprint number 3 so that we can keep the prints identified so that we know which version we're looking at. This is just the same law, but just with a reprint with these edits that we're discussing, right?
Yeah.
So just a couple clarifying commas in that first sentence, nothing.
Okay.
Yep, okay. So when we get to, I think the first section is the section that we just talked about. So K here. So if you said, and I'm trying to draft on the fly here.
Okay.
Except for farm stay STRs, comma, hosted STRs limited to 1 bedroom, which limit must be stated in the application and permit, may rent up to 210 days per year, and all other STRs may be rented. I should say, let's make be consistent here. Again, I'm doing this on the fly. Be rented to be consistent. STRs may be rented not more than an aggregate of 120 days per year. So does that achieve what you're looking to do?
Town board, is that?
Yeah, except do you?
I think I need an and here. What's that?
I think so.
Yeah, do you need to put the may be rented an aggregate, use the same language as an aggregate of up to 210?
Yes.
And an aggregate of 120?
Yes.
I would word it the same in both, yeah.
Yes, of course. I was trying to do this while we were talking. So STRs may be rented
An aggregate of
Up to
200.
an aggregate.
not more than an aggregate of 210 days a year, and all other STRs may be rented not more than an aggregate of 120 days a year. Is that parallel then? Okay.
There might be an extra and there where like right before STRs.
So I have except for Sarn State STRs, hosted STRs limited to 1 bedroom may be rented not more than an aggregate of 220 days a year, and all other, you're right. STRs may be rented not more than an aggregate of 120 days a year. 210, I'm sorry, and 120, right?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Then I'm just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to page through quickly. Okay. So this change that was just discussed, this is the section, I put it in a context, the supplementary regulations for short-term rentals, which is a new section that relates to STRs. And so that contains a number of provisions that apply to STRs. So there was a provision that says STRs are only permitted on a parcel that meets the minimum lot area. And so that provision is being struck completely. And then we just renumber the subsequent sections. And then in that same -32.1 supplementary regulations, hosted or unhosted STR, maximum of 4 bedrooms, provided that R1.5, R1, and H districts are limited to a maximum of 1 hosted bedroom as an STR. So the other districts where it's permitted is up to 4, but the R1, R5, and H limited to, excuse me, R1.5, R1, and H limited to one hosted bedroom. And then we get to farm stays. Now, to put it in context, this section is part of the broader use section. It's a narrative use table, if you will, that is set within the context of the ABD district permissions. So first there's a list of permitted uses, and then there's a listed of permitted accessory uses. So within the list of permitted accessory uses, we're adding a new set of subsections. And then the last one that's there now is just relabeled as N. So other uses customarily incidental is already there. So I think we have to renumber. We've changed some things. So let's see. We've got L, M, N. Michelle, I think we changed, this is one of those edits that we wanted to make. I think we changed the numbering here.
In the ag business
I
district?
think we did. So I think this is redesignated the current L as, it should be N, right?
I don't know, but I think that's a kind of a thing that we can check. We can,
Right, but we're only adding 2 new sections, right?
scroll down and see. L is the farms.
Yeah, L is the farm stay STRs, and then M is the registered STRs, and then we have what used to be L, right?
Okay, well, yeah, so that's
Yeah,
good.
you can double check that for me if you would, but so then this language here isn't really just an editorial change in L. We had language that said farm stay STRs are permitted in accessory use, but that language, as I noted, isn't really necessary in the context where what we already have is opening language that says these are the permitted accessory uses. So to be consistent, just drafting wise, farm stay STRs on a parcel within the ABD zoning district subject to the provisions of this subsection. And then the next change is to, again, strike the minimum lot area requirement for the RD3 and RD5 sections, which are the operated in conjunction with the AB. Okay, and then the only other change, I think, to the text is we had in, again, this is 49.1, which is part of our
It's the TND.
TND sections.
Yeah.
And so the first one is to permit, let's see, this is H1B. Michelle is TND-R.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, TND CC, right? For context.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Right, and then so what we added was the residence areas, which were not permitted before in the previous version of this draft, but which are now to be added consistent with the R1, 1.5, and H being added. Similarly, the hosted STRs right here with a maximum of 1 bedroom are permitted accessory uses and subject to those same supplementary regulations and the operating permit. Okay, so that's the text. And I believe that we did not make changes to the use table, further changes, but we can just go through that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the use table?
You know, it'd be better if it was a little bigger, but it's fine.
Yeah, I can make it bigger.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Whoops. Let's see, a little better.
That's better. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
That'll be better. There we go. Okay, so so as you know, we struck the bed and breakfast provision because that's now subsumed within the STR provisions. We made a conforming change to the home occupancy class 1 to make that a permitted use in all districts, and down to the new STR sections. We have hosted STRs, which are not permitted in the WC, but permitted in all of the other districts that are identified here. And then unhosted, permitted in the LD, RD5, RD3, and that's it. And then the register, the once a year exceptions permitted in all of these districts. Okay, and then you'll note that we have a footnote 6, which Michelle, you may want to renumber, but administratively, but the footnote 6 that was added is to reference that section 143-32.1 supplementary regulations. Okay.
Pardon me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I think that's it. All right. Any
Good.
other potential edits that the board would like to discuss?
Can we just go over the 30 days or less unhosted option
That's right. So it's an
one more
either.
time?
It's an either or. So if you've got a hosted 1-bedroom, you can, if you're an R1, you can choose to either do the unhosted one time up to 29 days or choose the hosted 1-bedroom option for now 210 days.
So I think that is, if
Not
you
above.
look at section 112-4, this section right here, B, only one registration is permitted per calendar year per property.
Okay, great. All right.
And an owner may not hold a registration under this section and an annual operating permit at the same time.
Right. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure this, to make it clear that it's either or.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other drafting questions or edits
I
based on the discussions?
don't have any.
I think we got one. We did mine, so.
Okay. Good. Town board members, any proposed modifications to the law as it currently exists? We'll call it G3 then, shall we? Dennis, are you still with us? Chris, if you'd be kind enough to put down your screen share, no worries.
Yep. Just 1 second. Got my screen back.
Yeah, still there.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to get my screen to talk to me because I don't have enough screen to tell. Yeah, there we go. No. Just a sec. To maximize the screen enough so that I can see it. Unless Dennis, oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay. Dennis,
Nope.
do we have it back?
Still there.
Oh,
I think you have to get back to your, make sure you're on your Zoom screen so you can stop sharing at the bottom.
I did. But I did.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Thank you.
Dennis?
Dennis, are you with us? Okay.
I am with you. I'm not sure what's going on here. It looks like it's trying to share, but I don't want to share anything here.
Okay. No worries, Dennis. Okay, at this time, seeing as we've heard from all those that wanted to speak tonight, I would recommend that we entertain a resolution to extend this public hearing to December 22nd at 7:35.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. And this would be resolution number 86. Chris, did you prepare a draft by any chance for us? We could.
Did.
Or you did? Okay.
Yes. Just 1 second.
Okay.
So then I need to share again, yes.
Yeah, we just asked you to take.
Just figured out how to get that off and now we're gonna do it again.
Sorry.
All right. Give me a second. All right, what do we see here?
Black.
Nothing yet.
Oh,
Says that she started screen sharing.
that's
Chris, why
interesting.
don't you, it's probably a pretty short resolution. Would you like to read it? Resolution number
I would sure do that.
of 2021, a resolution to extend a public hearing amending the local law regarding zoning changes. And that's my lead in.
So this is, so whereas on November 30th, the town board held a public hearing regarding a proposed local law G regarding short-term rentals and held a continued public hearing regarding a revised proposed local law G1 on December 14th. And whereas based on the information presented at said hearings, including the comments of the planning board and the town's own study of the matter, there's been proposed and presented to this board an amended form of such local law to be referred to as Local Law G3 proposed of 2021, entitled a local law to establish the same title, to establish a new chapter 112 of the Code of the Town of Red Hook to be known as short-term rentals, and to amend chapter 143 of the Code of the Town of Red Hook entitled zoning regarding short-term rentals and home occupations in the form on file. And that's the form that we just reviewed on the screen. Now therefore be it resolved by the town board of the town of Red Hook that the town board shall hold a continued public hearing on December, because that's 22nd, at 7:35 at the via, I guess via Zoom again, right?
Yeah, the same procedure as we've had this evening. And
to hear all interested persons regarding the proposed local law.
very good. I think somebody moved that resolution. Who was that?
That was Christine.
Yeah.
Chris Kane, thank you very much. I will second that resolution. Is there any
It was
further-
already seconded by Bill Hamill.
Bill Hamill,
My notes
yeah.
are correct.
Okay, Bill. Further discussion? If not, I would then move for a vote. Myself, aye. And Jacob Testa?
Aye.
Okay. For the folks at home, thank you very much for joining us. We would encourage you, as we have in the past, if you would like to submit some written comments between now and December 22nd on this matter and the modifications made to local law G, we would appreciate that. As I'm sure you've seen, you can get a lot more on a piece of paper than you can with the 3-minute rule, but we welcome both those opportunities. Okay. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we close tonight's town board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Bill Hamill, I think the second on that. Is there any further business, folks? If not, I would, all in favor?
Aye.
Christine Kane, Jacob Testa.
Aye.
Folks, thank you very much. Please stay healthy. We need you. Thanks.
Good night.